All right, so I think the first item on our agenda is we're going to let everyone make an introductory comment or two to extend to no more than 3 minutes. And I think everybody knows that and is probably prepared for it. And maybe we'll just start at this end and go down the line. So, Josie, do you want to go first? Yes.
Hi, everyone. I just want to thank you guys for coming out tonight. It's really, I think all of us appreciate the people who are here. So my name is Josie Torona, and you may recognize me from the town clerk's office. Prior to my current position, I was the deputy town clerk in the clerk's office for a few years, and I am currently serving as the interim town clerk. I was raised in Bristol, New Hampshire, and my family's here tonight in support of me. And in Bristol, where I grew up, I was involved in town government. I got involved because my family took me to Selectmen meetings, and I also attended annual town meetings. I helped former Selectmen campaign during the winter, and I also helped set up a Meet the Candidates night once. So I'm very excited to be part of one for my first time. While growing up, I saw residents come together. And this was meaningful because I saw them come and create conversation about issues in the community. And I also saw local officials working with these residents to make a difference in the community. And I look up to both residents who use these rights, and I look up to officials who work with residents in good faith to help resolve some of these issues. I studied at Plymouth State University, and that's where I earned my degree in public management with a focus in municipal government. My career began at the Plymouth Town Hall as an intern in 2014, and 2 years later I was promoted after I graduated from college to be the administrative assistant, and in 2017 I filled in as the executive assistant, and this was a temporary position, but it was an opportunity to work with many people, professionals in local government. And in 2018, I moved to Plymouth full-time. And since then, I have worked in the town clerk's office for 3 years. And I'm here tonight because I'm running to be the town clerk of Plymouth. I have the education, I have 3 years of experience, and I have the training to run this office efficiently and continue the friendly traditions that have always existed in our office. I have a strong sense of community, and I have worked very hard to form many positive relationships with the people in this community, and I hope that I'm given the opportunity to continue service in this town.
All right, thank you very much, Josie. Our next speaker is Jennifer Tebow, also running for town clerk.
Just Jenny, actually.
Oh, Jenny.
Yeah, just Jenny.
Excuse me.
Okay.
Yes, go ahead.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for coming tonight. My name is Jenny Tebow, and I'm running to be your town clerk. I deeply love Plymouth. It is my home. I went to Holderness Central and Plymouth Regional High School. I expanded my education at UNH, but missed our community, so transferred to Plymouth State University to finish my studies and to graduate. My major was communications, which is always relevant in our lives. I've officially been a Plymouth resident for about 18 years. My husband, Justin, and I have chosen to raise our 2 children, Marigold and August, here with my brother, Caleb. Many of my friends and family live here and are also involved in the town. This is where I attend church, where I've been employed for 10 years, and where I shop. I volunteer in multiple community and elected organizations. I'm the vice president of the PTA and work with the Special Olympics team, the Winnipesaukee Warriors, and their fundraising efforts. I completed the Penguin Plunge in February, where I jumped into the Atlantic Ocean after raising over $1,000. I have served the town and the community in various positions. I was elected to be a cemetery trustee for the town a few years ago, and then also elected to be a trust fund trustee. I was honored last year when I was asked to fill a vacancy in the select board. It has been incredibly enlightening learning even more about our great town. Why do I want to be Plymouth's town clerk? because I love our town, and I see the town clerk position as a spokesperson for the town. I enjoy working with and getting to know every person here in Plymouth. A town clerk is not just administrative, but also that first point of contact to any new resident while assisting the lifelong hometown residents. I have such fond memories of dealings with the former town clerk, Karen, and I had a great relationship with her. I would like to continue providing the town with the same warm and friendly service that my predecessor, Karen, provided. I'm a detail-oriented person and have been in customer service for almost 20 years. The past 9 have been in the highly regulated field of banking. I participate in quarterly training to ensure that I am always up to date on the latest regulations and strive to educate myself to better serve my customers. I'm ready and eager to learn the ins and outs of the town clerk office. I realize that the position comes with lots of training, and I am ready to educate myself for that. I believe that being a good representative for the public is being part of a team so that together everyone achieves more. I'm not afraid to ask for help, pitch in when needed, be challenged, and grow. I have greatly enjoyed living here and being involved with our town. I'm deeply rooted with commitment and loyalty to this community and the people within it. I know that I can help our town grow and still keep that small town feel. I look forward to answering your questions tonight. Thank you.
All right, so Josie and Jenny are our 2 town clerk candidates, and the rest of these folks up here are running for selectmen. We have 1 candidate, I understand, for the remaining part of a 3-year term of 2 years, and that's Neil McIver. And then we have 4 other candidates here tonight for, is it 2 or 3 openings? 2, for 2 seats. So there are 4 other candidates here for 2 seats. There's a 5th individual named Brandon Pike who is on the ballot. I've been told that he's traveling and is not here tonight. So we are going to hear from these folks, and the first of them is Mary Ann Barnsley, who's running for the 3-year term.
Thanks, Mike.
One of the 3-year terms.
Sorry, I'll need these. Good evening, and like the others have said, thank you for coming here tonight and giving us the opportunity. But, all right, so I need these. All right, good evening, and once again, thank you for giving us the opportunity tonight to introduce ourselves. As Mike said, my name is Mary Ann Barnsley, and I'm running for Select Board. Before I begin, I need to put something out on the table. There have been some rumors, and I'm here to confirm those rumors. Yes, I'm a Massachusetts native. But please don't hold that against me. I'm not a Yankees fan. But I can assure you, after living here for over 8 years, my family and I call Plymouth home. While living in Massachusetts, I spent over 20 years working in the information technology departments for many high-tech multinational companies. Before we decided to move to Plymouth, I held the position of Director of Information Systems for a drug testing firm. In this role, I managed teams of 20 or more. I was responsible for the creation and execution of complex project plans, and I managed my department's budget. So you may ask, how did I end up in northern New Hampshire, in a town I'd never heard of, running an ice cream shop? Well, I can tell you, I've always wanted to open up an ice cream shop. I thought, heck, who doesn't love ice cream? Old, young, male, female, all nationalities. Everybody loves ice cream. Even the lactose intolerant people like ice cream. In my opinion, one of the biggest decisions in opening up a business is location, and we found that here on Main Street. As we researched the town more and more, we knew it was the place for us. A wonderful school system for our daughter, an active chamber of commerce, and a thriving university. One of the benefits of owning my own business is the opportunity to give back to our community. I've worked with many libraries, schools, and nonprofits. I've sponsored many events and continue to partner with PSU. I've chaired the board for Voices Against Violence, a nonprofit organization here in Plymouth. I currently sit on the planning board. As a member of the planning board, I've come to understand and appreciate the many intricacies of the laws that govern our town. I've also been working with town officials, finding cost-effective ways to increase parking on Main Street. I'm sorry? Oh, We're working on, it's very complex, but we think it's doable. I'm also part of a group of business owners who are working together to better promote our town, making it a destination spot. Being on the select board would be an honor. It would allow me to address some of the issues we face. Things such as balancing economic development while keeping our small town feel, increasing revenue, and building on our town's partnership with the university. With my experience in managing large teams and getting things done, my active volunteerism in the community, and running my own business, I believe I would be an ideal addition to the select board. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Ann. Our next candidate is Carl Evans.
Good evening. Unlike most of the faces that you see up here, I probably am not familiar to virtually everyone here. The reason is that I recently relocated here with my wife, and the reason is we grew to appreciate this town after visiting family here many times over the years, and we left Northern Ohio and moved here about 2.5 years ago. A few bullet points about me. I was in the U.S. Army as a member of a missile battalion protecting Philadelphia, and eventually joined the military police. And following that, I managed a bank in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania for 9 years, and attended the University of Pittsburgh for a degree in economics. And then I pursued an education in chemistry and biology, and eventually achieved a degree in human biology and doctor of chiropractic. During my career in healthcare, I operated my own practice for 28 years and served in a variety of other practices in urban, suburban, and rural areas. And I've thoroughly enjoyed learning in such disparate settings. A neurosurgical practice that I was associated with, to the other end of the spectrum, treating Amish people on their farms in Northern Ohio. I also had an opportunity to serve as a trustee for the Ohio Scottish Games and the Geauga County Historical Society. Currently, I'm working with the U.S. Census Bureau to fulfill the constitutional obligation of the 10-year census. As a newcomer to the town of Plymouth, I see a town that's about to grow and would like the opportunity to offer my education and experience to help implement the changes that are inevitably going to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl. And our next candidate is Neil MacIver.
Good evening. I'm recovering from laryngitis. It's not very opportune for me. I'm a lifelong resident of Plymouth. My family's lived here since 1763, and they settled where the Arlen farm, the rock barn, was in 1764, and where the Yetton farm is. And I live on what was my great-grandfather's farm on the corner of Fairground and Quincy Road. I went to Plymouth schools, and I went to Plymouth State. I was on the ski team. That's why I went to Plymouth State. You know, when you're at that age, you don't really know what you want. But I became very interested in biology, and I did graduate work at UNH, and I received a BA from Plymouth, and I received a JD from Widener University in Philadelphia. But I really didn't like the city. I didn't want to raise my children there. I knew that Plymouth was a great town with good schools and a lot of opportunity. And that's why I'm here. And I've been serving Plymouth. I was in the legislature for 3 terms, from 76 to 82. I've been on a number of different town committees and commissions, and I served as a selectman for 5 years. And I would really like to continue to make contributions to the town with the knowledge and experience that I have. I've been practicing wetland science for 28 years. I'm Army Corps certified, and I have EPA certification in erosion and sediment control and stormwater management. And I'm also a subsurface designer. And I just really love the town, and I want the best for the citizens of Plymouth.
Thank you, Neil. And now we have Mr. Zach Terrell.
Thank you. And thank you, everyone, for coming out tonight. It's sometimes difficult to get out for these sorts of things, and we all appreciate everybody taking your evenings here. I've been in the Plymouth community for the past 20 years. First, working at Plymouth State University, where I was for 10 years as part of the staff and an adjunct faculty member. I then left for private industry and worked for a San Francisco-based technology journalism company for a little over a year, maybe closer to 2. And recently, for the past 5 years, I've been working for a small company that's very innovative and distributed all over the world. Why do I want to be a selectman? I come from a family of public servants. My grandfather was a selectman in the town, the small town where I grew up in New Hampshire. My father's currently a selectman in that town. My father was a fire chief in that town for 30 years. My mother was a teacher. My brother's a firefighter. My sister-in-law is a teacher. My grandmother graduated from Plymouth State University and then spent her entire career as a teacher. My wife, who's here tonight, she is brilliant and involved in the community, worked for Voices Against Violence, participates in Katie, is a member of the PTA. And I have always known that I wanted to serve my community as well. But over the past 20 years, my career took a different path. I've been focused in education and the private sector, working on innovative projects and managing very large teams. At Plymouth State University, I was on a lot of committees. I participated in a lot of that sort of work, which I think is very similar to what we have here. I've managed very large budgets. My current budget that I manage at my company is a multi-million-dollar budget with lots and lots of financial pressures for us not to grow year over year over year. So that sort of experience is stuff that I want to bring to the town of Plymouth, where my family lives, where my children grow up, and a place that I love. I want to bring that innovation and fiscal responsibility to this community. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Zach. And then our final candidate, last but not least, is Michael Weaver.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming. My name is Mike Weaver, and I am running for the Select Board of Plymouth. I have lived in Plymouth for 36 years. Before coming to Plymouth, my wife, Joanne Macton, and I lived in Lincoln, New Hampshire, and taught at Linwood Public Schools. We moved to Plymouth in 1984 because the town had a history of strong support for its schools. Also, the town provides high-quality services for its residents. 3 of our 4 children graduated from Plymouth schools. I worked at Linwood as an elementary teacher and a K-12 assistant principal for 34 years, retiring in 2011. As an educator, I have successfully worked with students, parents, teachers, and school boards, and I am very proud of the work that I've done there. As an elementary teacher for 19 years and later assistant principal for 15, I learned early the importance of keeping an open and welcoming relationship with parents and community members. This helped our staff and administration to better serve the needs of the students of our community. I began to work with Scouts in Plymouth in 1991 when my sons joined Cub Scouts. I started as a den leader, and as my children got older, I became an assistant scoutmaster, working as a merit badge counselor and Eagle Scout mentor for Plymouth and for Linwood. Being prepared, perform a good turn daily, and the Scout Oath have been my guiding values since I was a Scout and as an adult. I retired from Scouting in 2015 as the charter representative for Troop 56. Running town government has become more complex and time-consuming for our elected officials. I have begun and am willing to spend time that is needed by attending the training in town government to get the job done. I have served as a member of the Town Budget Advisory Committee. I have attended the 2019 New Hampshire Municipal Association Budget and Finance Workshop. I have received a copy of the Guide to Open Government. I have reviewed a copy of the Guide to Open Government offered by the New Hampshire Municipal Association. I will attend any NHMA workshops that will help me in my work as a select board member. In my role as school administrator, I have helped to develop and implement annual school budgets. I believe that we need a more open government so that the residents of Plymouth can be better informed and more involved. I will seek out and encourage more people to become involved in town committees. Also, I will encourage the Record Enterprise to cover our select board meetings. The governor has designated the town of Plymouth an economic opportunity zone. We need to have a better understanding of what that means and whether this designation can help our town.
Okay.
Plymouth serves as a hub for surrounding towns, providing services for Plymouth State University. Has many nonprofit organizations, and most important is trying to replace an infrastructure that is failing.
Mike?
These are some reasons for a close review of the economic zone designation and see whether it can be of an opportunity for our community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, so those are our introductory remarks. That was the easy part because it was prepared, and now we're going to ask the tough questions. As we go through these, you'll see that some of these were directed to select board candidates, and others were directed to the clerk candidates, and then even others were directed to everyone. So I think what we're going to do is start with a few of the everyone questions. And I think for the first one, we'll just go down the line again. Remember, you have 2 minutes for each of these, but I see we've already gone through almost a fourth of our time, so if you're tempted to make your answer a little shorter than 2 minutes, I think that would be just fine. And the first question here is, and this is for everyone, what personal qualities make you a good candidate for the job that you are seeking? And I guess we'll just start at this end of the table.
Hi, everyone. Well, aside from my education at Plymouth State University, where I earned my degree in public management, prior to serving as the interim town clerk, I worked with Karen Freitas for 2 years, and I served as her deputy town clerk. So while working with Karen, I was able to learn the ins and outs of the town clerk's office and the clerk's responsibilities. 2 years ago, I was trained to be a municipal agent, which means I have the training to work with people on registering and titling motor vehicles. I am also familiar with state statutes regarding motor vehicle registrations, vital records, and elections. And this year is a major election year. We have 3 more coming up. Plymouth is unlike other towns because we have a hospital and we also have a university, and these institutions often add to my responsibilities in the town clerk's office. I have knowledge in election law and facilitating elections in Plymouth, which I have helped to facilitate since 2018. And I was fortunate to have worked with Karen Freitas for over 2 years. I have invested a lot of time into my job, learning the responsibilities of the town clerk. So someday I would be able to run in this election and hopefully be elected. It took me about a year to be fully confident in the position. It's a lot of information that's required of the town clerk to learn. Once you are elected, if you don't already have your training or you're not certified, you're required to shadow for at least a month before you're even able to touch any of the equipment. And if I'm elected as town clerk March 10th, it will be a more seamless transition for me, and I'll be able to start implementing my goals rather than just learning the position. And my time's up.
My time is up. Thank you, Josie. Jenny, so just a reminder, the question is, what personal qualities make you a good candidate for this job?
Thank you. One of the things that I pride myself on is my interest in things. Learning the town clerk position and all that it entails is interesting to me, even though it may not be interesting to everyone. But the idea that there is basically an RSA for everything, and you're able to research that, is something that that I'm interested in. I really enjoy connecting people with services, which is something that the town clerk's office is sometimes able to do. Wow, it's great being up here. Sorry. One of the things that I do at the bank is we have quarterly trainings, which means that we are constantly being refreshed in existing statutes and anything that has come out new, which, as we all know in the world of banking, there is often new information out there. It is something that that I enjoy doing, staying up to date on something that can help my customers and make it so that everything works out well for them. That's something that I think will easily be able to transfer over to the town clerk's office. Like I said, there's rules for everything, and learning those is something that I would be greatly interested in. And that's it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Jenny, Mary Ann?
So I think a couple of the qualities that I think I bring to this is my loyalty, but my commitment to this community. I think most would agree it's a very, very special place. It's been an easy transition coming from Massachusetts, moving up to Plymouth. Once again, there's something special about it. I can tell you the first day we drove up here and came around that rotary, you knew there was something here. And I really want to be part of it. I think myself and my family have given back to the community, and it's something we enjoy. Like Jenny, I don't know, I like to watch the select board meetings on TV. I don't know if I'm the only one, but there's a lot of information out there. And, you know, the select board does a great job, and I just want to be part of it. Thank you.
Carl?
As far as personal qualities that would suit me for a position on the select board, several things pop to mind. My focus. Once I select what I would like to happen, I work toward that until it's accomplished. I have 12 years of college because I wanted to do a particular thing, and it took that long to accomplish. So the commitment was there to carry it through, and I would bring that sort of focus to a position on the select board.
Thank you, Carl. Neil?
I have a number of reasons why I believe I'm qualified to serve. I have a very strong background in ethics. I studied ethics intensively in law school, and I've been taking courses on an annual basis as required for my Army Corps and EPA licenses and my DES licenses, and I've had quite a lot of training. As a Plymouth State graduate, I have a bond with the university, and I feel that the town and the university need to work together, and it will be better for both the town and the university. I served 15 years as chairman of the trustees of the Plymouth Methodist Church. We had a church that was dying. I think we had 9 people going to church. We were hemmed in by the university, and I oversaw the sale of the church to the university, and we purchased land and built a brand new church, and it's working. I have substantial experience in the town, and I have a strong desire to bring citizens into our government. And I want to bring as many people into our government so that we have a strong democratic base.
Thank you, Neil. Zach?
In my current position as a director in the business unit I work for, I have a lot of my days spent from going very high level strategic to very detail oriented, small, on the ground work. And I think that that's one of the things that is sometimes missing from the select board, is that they either get too involved in small things and they don't have time for the big things, or they're paying too much attention to the big things and can't downshift and understand that they have to approve an expenditure for the highway department. That's what I do. That's my day, is the high level and the low level simultaneously switching between the two. That, plus I'm very detail oriented about these things. I know my team's budget down to the last dollar. I know where our money goes. I know where we're investing. I know what the goals are for maintaining a stable budget. So the combination of those two things, I think, make me a really good candidate for helping the town through a period where I think that we're going to see a lot of growth in this town. Things like South Main Street, things like development on the Tenny Mountain corridor. We're going to see a lot of development, and we're going to need to pay attention both to the strategies that are outlined in the master plan while also attending to the details.
Thank you, Zach. Mike?
I am a very open and honest person. I am a very good listener when people are, making a point. And I also am a self-learner. If I don't know something, I will spend the time studying it till I know it. And I'm also very good at looking at the whole picture and figuring out what it takes to accomplish that. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Hold that microphone. Let's start with you. Because I'm supposed to sort of rotate things a little bit, And so we'll go down this way and then bring them. We're still going to have to move the microphone all the way back up, I guess, regardless. But the next question I have here is, what are your thoughts about ethical standards and ethics generally as a prospective public official?
Ethics is absolutely critical to any governmental system that hopes to function as a democracy. Without it, there can be no democracy. My ethical training came from several sources. First, the military. Very strict on what is allowed, what isn't, and why. And it became second nature. From there, I went into banking. Banking again, without ethics in banking, there's a lot of trouble. And my oath, when I became a doctor of chiropractic, reminded me again of the importance of an oath and ethics required in that oath to simply focus on what is best for everyone, ignoring any other distractions. So ethics is an absolutely critical part of everyday life, but particularly in government.
My turn? You don't want to go that way?
You sure?
Let's go this way. That's fine. Mary Ann, you can be next. You wanted a little more time to think?
Of course, all the time in the world.
Yeah.
I'll keep it short because it's a short answer. Like Mike had said, it goes without saying, without ethics, there's nothing left after that. If you can't trust your elected officials, I'm not sure, once again, where you go from that. So it's certainly near and dear to me. It plays an important role in everything I do. My daughter calls me out on it a couple times. But yeah, once again, without it, there's not much more to say. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. You're up.
I again agree. It is something that is integral to the belief system that I have. Something that I learned with working on the select board, which I wasn't necessarily aware of, is the idea of non-public. Because obviously, if you're not on the select board, once it comes to non-public, you leave. And knowing these pieces of information that are important in different ways and how they connect to the town, it's incredibly important to keep that confidentiality and to know that if it affected, one person, I'm not going to share it and have it get there. To know that you can trust that confidentiality will stay there. I work in a bank. If a husband comes in the morning, I literally cannot say to his wife who comes in the afternoon, "Hey, I saw your husband," because that's a breach of confidentiality. That's how secure we keep that. There's always gray areas to certain things, but it is something that is black and white. Being able to be trusted is something that is incredibly important to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. Josie?
From my experience in the town clerk's office, I have learned that the town clerk has to have a strong understanding of her role and impact on the community. I have to be considerate in all approaches that I take. For example, I have worked with domestic violence victims. I have worked with the homeless community. I have worked with students and veterans, a wide range of people in this community. And I have to consider all of them when I'm helping them. In the town clerk's office, most of the information I work with is confidential because part of my role as a public official is to maintain sensitive information. While most of that information that I handle is confidential, I do firmly believe that open communication and transparency is essential in a thriving community. As a current public official, I think it's important to invite the public to ask me questions because public officials should value your ideas and experiences, and I do hold myself to that standard. One of my goals as town clerk is to make all board meeting minutes more accessible to the public by holding these records in the town clerk's office. This is required by state law. Another goal of mine is to use the town website to share these meeting minutes and make them more accessible to the public, and post more about the many services provided by the town clerk's office.
Thank you, Josie. Let's get that microphone down to Neil, I think.
I'm a member of the New Hampshire Association of Natural Resource Scientists and the International Erosion Control Association. We have very high standards on ethics. And having practiced as a scientist for 28 years, I have learned the importance of making ethical decisions. You have to know when to recuse yourself when you're in public trust. Whenever there's any indication that there might be a conflict of interest, those are very important considerations. Having a legal background is extremely helpful to understand many of the ethical problems that you face in public office.
Thank you, Neil. Zach?
Well, I think everyone up here is going to be pro-ethics, right? That's the obvious answer, and of course, right, a public official has to be ethical. I want to echo what Neil said. It's also about paying attention to conflicts of interest, making sure you recuse yourself whenever it even becomes close to inappropriate. I also want to echo what Josie said about openness. I think that an ethical town official is also managing a government that is open about the things that they're doing. They're sharing their minutes. They're running meetings in a way that meets the letter of the law. That they're actually being very smart and respectful about when they go into private session. Obviously, you have to go into private session to protect certain things, but you shouldn't be using private session more often than is appropriate. That's where you start to get into some of these ethical questions. Public government succeeds best when it's open and honest and people can see you walking the walk, talking the talk around ethics.
Thank you, Zach. And now Mike.
Thank you. Again, being an honest and open person, I have those same expectations of people that I work with. Decisions that we make can't be based on our, how it affects our work or, what our friends want us to vote. Especially in a small community, you need to be honest and upfront about what you're thinking about. And again, if the decisions are going to affect you in a positive way, you should not make that decision. Thank you.
Mike, hold on to that mic for a minute. Do you think you can take two in a row?
I got it.
The next question, this is just for the board, for the select board candidates. What is your experience with fiscal management, meaning developing and executing a budget?
As a assistant principal, I was in charge of a budget on a yearly basis. I worked with the board and the school budget committee to develop that budget. So I've done that for 15 years before I retired.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Zach?
In my current position, I manage a multi-million-dollar budget, both controlling the incoming revenue stream, the allocation of all the funds, all of the decisions around when we choose to add positions, at what level we add them, where we add future expenses. And so that's part of my day-to-day is managing a very large, complicated budget. And honestly, with international tax laws and all the complexity that brings with it. So I'm also very familiar with learning new rules, new regulations, and how to conform to those.
All right, thank you very much. Neil?
I've been managing my own business for 44 years, and I'm semi-retired now. But I served 6 years as a state legislator. I was involved in state budgets and all that goes with that. And I served on the Plymouth Budget Committee for a couple of years, and also on the Board of Selectmen. I was involved in town budgets.
With a degree in economics and 9 years in banking, I have experience with managing budgets, not necessarily creating them. As a business owner, the practice that I created had to establish a budget and live within the budget, although that budget wasn't anywhere near the size that Plymouth deals with. But the principles are the same. There's a certain amount of income, and that income has to be spent judiciously. Beyond that, I don't think anything else is absolutely critical.
Thank you. Mary Ann?
Let's see, I'm lucky enough that I don't have to worry about the home budget, not my job. And, but I do manage my business's budget. It's difficult for a seasonal business to be able to allocate everything across the 12 months. But with some complex Excel spreadsheets, been able to do it, and occasionally we make some money. Prior to, when I lived in Massachusetts, I was also responsible for my department's budget. It's a complicated process. It's difficult to project what you'll need in the future, but it is a necessity, and it certainly can be done. Thank you.
The next, that was for the select board, so. Yep. The next question was, yes, Josie?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
The town clerk is required to create and implement a budget. Do you think that's a question that we could answer?
Sure, you guys can answer that question too.
Okay, so my experience with fiscal management is in banking for the last 10 years. Part of what I do is working if a customer comes in and is having issues with their managing their funds. I'm able to help them with their checkbook. That's obviously on a much smaller scale. But dealing with the select board, one of the major considerations is the select board is the annual budget, and working with figuring out each department. Are the requests valid? How can they be met? How can they not be met? And figure out another way around them. So that's where I was able to get the majority of my experience.
Thank you. Josie?
Thank you. So part of my curriculum at Plymouth State University, I was required to take courses in accounting and bookkeeping. The past 3 years in the town clerk's office, I have been able to work with Karen and work on my bookkeeping skills by the reporting we do in the office. Last year, I submitted the next fiscal budget for the town clerk's office. I am familiar with the town clerk's budget and understand the flow of money very well in the town clerk's office. I'd like to actually continue working on the town clerk's budget because I see that there are areas that we could work on. For example, find that there are a lot of non-related, sometimes expenses that are taken out of one line. For example, publication expenses are sometimes taken out of office expenses because the publication line has never really been used in the town clerk's office. So I'd like to work on that line, possibly add a training line, and also making sure that fixed expenses from the state, for example, vital records, which the state collects from the town every month, has its own separate line. And I think this would also help with the transparency in the town. So I know when you look at a budget, sometimes it is a little confusing, but it would be more clearer if line items were line item.
All right, thank you, Josie. The next question was directed specifically to Neil, and it is, what was your reason for resigning from the Board of Selectmen in 2018 during your term?
I was struggling with a health issue, which it was pretty serious and debilitating, but I have had treatment and it's resolved, and I feel really good.
Thank you. And then we have sort of another category of questions, which was under the heading Goals and Vision. And the first one is for everyone, and it is, well, there's sort of two parts, but it's related. Name something you think is currently very well done by the town, and explain why you feel this way, and what do you think can be done to improve the town? So what's being done well, and what could be improved? And I guess we'll start, well, Neil, you've got the microphone if you want to tackle that one.
I think our planning board is doing a great job, and I think that we should get our Energy Commission going again, because I think they were doing a great job. And I'm somewhat, as a former firefighter, I really feel that the fire department's doing a great job.
All right. Why don't you pass it to your right, and we'll have Zach, you want to answer that question?
Sure. I think the vibrancy of the downtown in Plymouth is something that our community really rallies around. It's the thing that Mary Ann saw when she came into town 8 years ago and wanted to stay, right? It's that downtown area, and I think we have plans to expand that in the master plan, and I think that that's great. As for areas that I think we can improve, my understanding is that the relationship with the university over the past few years is less tight than it might have been in the past. I think there's a real opportunity to open that back up, to reach out to the university, figure out, what's a win for them and a win for us. How can we together continue to make this a great town?
Thank you. Mike?
I think the services that the town provides are excellent. Plymouth also is a hub for a lot of communities around us, and as Plymouth citizens, we support those areas where people come in for services. The reason I ran for selectman, but I felt that we needed a more open government, and that was based on the fact that I went to a work session. I was told that I couldn't attend, and then at one point when the town administrator was leaving, retiring, we asked as a community if we could be part of the hiring process, and we were told yes. And then a while later, we were told we couldn't participate in it. So I would like to see our select board opened up more.
All right, and I think it's down to Carl?
I think there are several areas that the town has done extremely well. The schools. The schools are excellent with their facilities and educational materials. You'd find it difficult to find any place anywhere close by with that kind of excellence. The Peace Library is an extraordinary facility. Museums and Historical Society, those are treasures. And one thing that I've noticed on an ongoing basis, being from Ohio, northern Ohio, we got a lot of lake effect snow. 2 feet of snow wasn't unusual, but everything's flat. And it was relatively easy to clear the roads when they're all flat and straight. Around here, it's amazing that the road crews are able to keep the roads here as clean as they are under some really adverse conditions many, many times. Things I think that could get better. I don't think Plymouth is in a good spot to call itself the transition between the Lakes region and the Mountains region. Plymouth ought to be a destination all by itself.
All right, Mary Ann?
Thank you, Carl. Let's see, being on the select board and different committees in the town, I've really come to appreciate the folks that are on those committees and our town officials. I have never met a group of dedicated folks before. If you do have the opportunity to come to any of those meetings, I guarantee you'll be impressed. We may not always agree with their decisions, but they are dedicated. I think one of the areas I'd like to focus on, and I'd actually like to be part of the conversations, is our economic development. I think we'd all agree here that Tenny Mountain is ripe for that. It has been declared an opportunity zone, so there are tax benefits for businesses coming in there. So that's certainly one of the areas I'd like to see us do better at. That would increase our revenue, much like Market Basket coming in now. We don't know what that will turn into, but we'll see within the next year. That will help us keep taxes steady. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
One of the things that, especially after being on the select board and dealing with the budget that the town has and has had in past years, is seeing how well our different departments do work with the budget they have or the budget that they don't have. The budget was frozen, and they still ran the town and made things happen. Also hosting events throughout the year, the parades and the community that we have here. That said, I would like to increase communication of those events and increase involvement. I know that this was a postponed event, but I would have loved to have had the entire room filled, because this is such an important event as well as many others, and to get more people to come to these events, not just this kind, but every type of event that the town holds. That's what makes our town special, is the involvement of the people, and it's great to see everyone, so thank you.
Well, I've been in the town clerk's office for 3 years, but I've actually worked for the town of Plymouth for 5 years, since 2000 and, actually, it will be close to 6 years, since 2014. Being with the town so long, we have a lot of great departments that work very hard with sometimes very little resources. For example, on election, the night prior to the election, I was up until close to midnight, and I want to extend a large thank you to Park and Rec, because their members stayed up with me to help find tables, of all things, for election day. That was very appreciated. But we also, like Carl said, we have an amazing library that have great services and resources in this community. And I think the Recycling Center had a podcast recently, and I think it's great that we're doing things like that in this community. Something I'd like to see the town do is, again, work on communication with this community. I'd like us to communicate more with the businesses on Main Street, and also on the west side on Tenny Mountain Highway. I'd like us to communicate more with residents at public forums and also during our regular time off. I see Plymouth as an area that collects a lot of people from different pockets in this community. And I see it as an area that has a lot of potential. And I think if we work with each other, that we have unlimited opportunity.
All right, thank you, Josie. And now I'm looking for a volunteer to be the first to answer the next question, which isn't especially difficult, but who wants to be it? Oh, Mary Ann gets it. I was going to point out, too, that this is being live streamed for people in town, so the fact that that the place isn't full doesn't necessarily tell us just how many people are actually experiencing it. And I should take a moment to thank PBTV for their efforts here and for doing this for us. And the next question is, Mary Ann.
Don't make me regret this, Mike.
What's that?
Don't make me regret this.
No. No. No, it's a nice topic, current event one. Are you in favor of the system of town administrator or town manager?
Oh, that's not a fair one. I've been doing a lot of research on that because there is differences between the two, and I thought they were slim, and they're not. I attended a town meeting the other night where Kathy Kelsey stood up. I was leaning towards staying with town administrator, and then Kathy Kelsey stood up and gave a great explanation for going through the town manager route. The potential of being on the select board, I can see her points. The select board handles a lot of details, hiring and firing, budgeting, and it probably stops the select board from looking at the town at a higher level and moving things along, such as economic development. So I'm for it. I was a little nervous because the passing on some of those responsibilities to a person who's not been elected. I know some people feel very strongly about that. They've elected the select board to carry out the issues at hand. But I feel really strongly at this point that we should go with town manager. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mary Ann. Carl?
I believe Plymouth is about to experience a growth, and it's going to need the attention of the select board to manage that effectively. And in order to do that, some of the nuts and bolts issues that tie up a lot of time and energy of the select board can be handled by a town manager. It is not nearly as easy to be done by a town administrator. The town manager has more authority, but it's going to allow the select board to focus on what this town ought to become in the future. This town, the reason that we moved here is it is the quintessential New England town. It's got everything that everybody thinks of when they think of a New England town. We don't want to lose that, but we want to expand on it, and that's going to require the attention of the select board without all the, do we spend $20 on this, and who's allowed to do that? So town manager is where I support.
All right, Neil?
I agree with Carl. I signed the petition for town manager. I spoke in favor of it at Monday night's select board meeting. And I just feel that our town is growing. The requirements of management of the town affairs are becoming more complex. And that's just a nutshell.
Thank you, Neil. All right, Zach?
I'll be the first to break from consistency. So I've, like Marianne, done a lot of reading on town manager versus town administrator. Ordinarily, and actually when I first heard this, I thought, well, sure, let's take some of that responsibility off the select board. But then I realized that Plymouth has 5 people on their select board. They're not a 3-person select board, they're a 5-person select board. I think a highly engaged and well-executing select board should be able to work with the town administrator, especially as competent a town administrator as we have, to enact things. As a select board, we can delegate things to her. We can have her take on responsibilities. They're not legislatively set. So I feel like that level of flexibility gives 5 select board members an efficient way to work with their town administrator to enact the things that this town needs. I think a town manager could work as well. I don't think it's the sort of thing where if we make this change, we're going to head down some dark path one way or the other. I think it's going to be fine either way. But we've been running with a town administrator. If we keep the select board well engaged, well participating, I think it can work under the model we currently have.
Thank you, Zach. Okay, Mike?
I am in favor of a town manager. Again, our community, things are changing, things are getting very complex. There's money out there. Take, for instance, the Economic Opportunity Zone. You know, when questioned about that, the board didn't give very much information on it. And I'm sure with a town manager form of government, that person would be out there studying it and bringing that information back to us. I think of a town manager, if you look at a school system, they have a superintendent. And their superintendent, one of their jobs is to inform the board on what's going on. And as a town manager, that's also their job, because the board only meets a few hours a week, and they really, based on our budget and based on the complexities of running a town, they can't do it on their own. So that's why I'm in favor of a manager. Thank you.
Now, this question, as it was posed, was for everybody, so we can have Josie and Jenny answered as well.
One of the biggest aspects to me is that the person who is making decisions is somebody that the town elected, which is why I am in favor of the administrator model. I, as being on the select board, am very aware of all of the things that we ask our administrator to do, and she succeeds mightily in those things. The delegation is there. She is willing to do anything for the town, as would any administrator. And I feel that knowing that the town was able to elect, again, a 5-person board, to make the decisions and to be involved. One of the things that Zach had said earlier is being involved with the big decisions and the small decisions. And I think being involved in those small decisions, the hiring, the firing, some of the personnel difficulties, don't happen a lot, I'm going to tell you, in this town. But when they do happen, I think that the involvement of the select board is something that is a benefit to the town. So thank you.
Josie?
Well, I should begin by stating that I'm undecided on what I think is best. I think that a town manager form of government would allow the Board of Selectmen to focus on some larger policies in town, maybe working on the town's relationship with the university, or working on its relationship with the state. I also see in the town that right now people are asking for a more involved Board of Selectmen. Currently, like Zach said, we have 5 people on the board, and I think people are searching for more cooperation and more of a voice in this community. All I ask is that the person who is in that office, who is either town administrator or town manager, works with the town clerk. It's a very important office, just like the selectman's office. We handle a lot of big, large responsibilities, and I hope that there's communication as well as respect for the differences in these positions. If you are going to be at the town election, this warrant article will be on the town ballot. It's actually RSA 37, so I encourage you to please look it up and read more on it. And that's it.
All right, thank you, Josie. The next question is just for the select board, and since Mary Ann started the last time, why don't we pass it down to Carl, and then Mary Ann can be last. And the question is, what are the important issues currently facing the select board, and what 3 things would you like to have the board focus on during your term?
I think some of the issues, I think it's been mentioned before, transparency. I've talked to a number of residents who feel that they have no idea what's really happening at Town Hall, and they're not being invited to find out. They're being prevented from knowing. Another issue that I think needs to be addressed is crumbling infrastructure in the town. This has got to be handled one way or another, and it's going to be an awful lot less expensive to do it now than if you try to put it off for 5 or 10 years. And the thing is, there are regional and federal agencies with money and expertise who were interested in working with the town to get these things accomplished, but so far it doesn't seem to have been worked on at all. I think that those are 2 of the main issues. Plus, there are ways to change Main Street without losing the flavor, but turn it into something that's going to literally attract far more people on foot because it's a beautiful place to be. I think those are things that the select board ought to be looking at in the future.
All right, Carl, thank you. Neil?
When we had the hearing on the $250,000 bond issue, we had a state official in the room who made some very striking comments about available grants that we hadn't really considered. And I have some other items that I'm concerned about. I feel that ethics and transparency are extremely important. Our tax base in our community needs to be built up, and we need to focus on environmental stewardship. And I think our purchasing procedures need to be revised. And we also have a housing crisis in this community, and young people are having a very difficult time making it into the housing market. So that's pretty much what I have to say on those
All right,
issues.
thank you, Neil. Zach?
Thank you. I think that the issue of transparency in our government is a big deal, but I think hand in hand with that is also community participation. If we don't get a full room of people showing up to select board meetings or budget hearings or school board meetings, it becomes very easy to be apathetic in those groups and maybe run through an agenda a little bit faster or skip over some procedures. And that's when the ethical issues start to creep in. So I think that there's a combined community participation plus transparency of what's going on that has to go hand in hand. I think that's one of the biggest issues we have right now. I think there's an issue around housing, but also a really big opportunity. The planning board's been discussing how New Hampshire's looking at some 55 plus sort of boom in population, figuring out ways to support housing for that group could open up housing for first-time home buyers and that sort of thing. But I think a lot of that also factors around our tax base, and if we continue to have significant tax increases each year, it becomes even harder for those young people or those people on fixed incomes to afford to live in our community. So we need to figure those pieces out.
Thank you, Zach. Mike?
Again, we need a more open government than we've had in the past, and that's one thing we need to work on. Plymouth has one of the highest property taxes in the state, so we need to figure out, are we using our money effectively so that we can keep the taxes down, because they are fairly high for any community in the state of New Hampshire. And again, the infrastructure in Plymouth needs some work. On the budget committee, I worked with the highway department, and it showed that we need to do some work there. That would be one place I'd work with. And again, encouraging more people to attend our meetings. That's what helps keeps it open, and we need to do that. And income, different kinds of grants that are coming in, we need to explore that more, especially the economic opportunity zone, to see how that could benefit us. Thank you.
All right, I think we got to get that microphone down to Mary Ann.
Sure. Thank you. Once again, I think one of the most important issues facing us today is the economic development piece of our town. As others have said, I think we're ripe for growth. Tenny Mountain is an obvious spot. We're also looking at making better use of the airport. It's an untapped resource, and I believe there's many opportunities there. We can also work with the Department of Business and Economic Affairs, helping us with grants and, once again, other ways of growth while maintaining our quintessential New Hampshire town. Going hand in hand with that is I'd like to see an increase in revenue. Once again, Tenny Mountain being an opportunity zone, there are a lot of tax benefits for businesses to open up on Tenny Mountain. We had at the planning board session last week, a developer brought an idea to us to build and open a 55-plus community as well as an assisted living facility. As was mentioned before, that's the largest age group growing in New Hampshire, and we certainly see that here, very active senior community, and I think they would benefit from that. The last area I'd like to see us focus on is our partnership with PSU. As others have said, it's a strained relationship. My business and I have partnered a lot with PSU. We currently, when admissions does a tour with potential students and their parents, they end the tour at my shop. It's certainly great for business. It's great for PSU, showing potential students, the quaintness of our town. Parents feel a lot better. How does our town feel safe? Certainly in my shop, it's the bar they would like their students to come to. Sorry. And so I'd like to see that partnership increased.
All right, the next question is for the Select Board. And this is the question, and then we can decide who's going to go first. How would you prioritize the goals designated for the Select Board in the Plymouth Master Plan? Who'd like to take that first?
So, being on the planning board, I've had the opportunity to work on the planning board. I can't take much credit for it. I joined the end, and we certainly have been. It was a long process. Took a lot of input from the town, but the planning board did a great job pulling everything together and how people feel about their town. Once again, I hate to keep sounding repetitive, but I take from it the economic development piece. I would love to see an economic development director put forth in the town, sort of selling Plymouth, right? Why come here? Why live here? I'd love to see more students, more young people, families live and work in the town. Living is very difficult here. I think we'd all agree our taxes are high, but we need to help those folks. So that's certainly one area I'd like to focus on.
All right, thank you, Mary Ann. Carl?
I don't have sufficient knowledge on the answer to this question to actually attempt it. I'm still in the process of learning about what I need to know about the town of Plymouth.
Neil?
My highest priority for planning and development is environmental stewardship. I believe truly that Plymouth is the destination for environmental studies and ecotourism, and that should be our town's brand. And that's my highest priority.
All right, Zach?
That master plan is full of so many great things. If you live in Plymouth and you haven't read it, you should take the time to read it. It really is a great document. I spent some time highlighting it. The economic development stuff is great. South Main Street development is fantastic. But I want to call it something that just to me it sounded really exciting. There's a bunch of stuff in there around developing better bike trails and non-car transportation around town, connecting some of the parks and some of the open green areas. I would love to see some of that happen, and I know even now there's like a land purchase that's under consideration that helps to move that along. I would love to see some of that happen. The more we can get outside and enjoy this beautiful community, I think it makes this an even more special place.
And Mike?
Thank you. Well, one of the things the plan has been working on is the development of Tenny Mountain Highway. And we've seen a lot of businesses go there, and it's been the hope of most community members that will help bring our taxes down or keep our taxes level. So that's one thing on the plan that I would focus on and see, again, if we're being the most effective in the use of the money that we're raising in revenues. Thank you.
Did we do it? Yeah, we did everybody, right? I just lost it for a second there, I'm sorry. And the next question is just for the clerk candidates. And the question is, aside from the normal day-to-day duties and obligations, what are the town clerk's responsibilities concerning voter registration, the election day process, and what is your knowledge of state rules and regulations for voting?
So I know that there are many rules. I have been reading up on them. It deals with so many different aspects, from rules regarding absentee voters to day of, as well as registration. I do not know all of the specifics because I have not experienced it yet, or the training. But it is important to know that it's not always knowing it in the past, it's knowing it in the future. So I would definitely be able to learn that quickly. Thanks.
All right, thank you very much. And Josie?
Thanks, Mike. So I have 3 years of experience in the town clerk's office, and this does include preparing for and helping to facilitate elections in this town. The town clerk has many responsibilities regarding elections, and some of them include the recruitment of volunteers, preparation of most election materials, and assisting with the post-election reporting. As the interim town clerk, I helped facilitate the most recent presidential primary in Plymouth. I recruited a total of 25 volunteers from different pockets in this community. Some of them are here tonight. And I was happy to see many returning volunteers come back and help us train our new volunteers. That is essential. One of my goals was to provide high-quality pre-election training with the election officials to assure that our newer volunteers and past volunteers are up to date with the current election laws. And I was successful with the election officials in doing so, and I want to continue working with them in the future to make sure that we have more election trainings. As the current town clerk, there are many responsibilities. In the past, for example, we are in charge of making sure that all of our volunteers are well fed during Election Day. I wanted to try something a little different. So I decided to ask local businesses to donate breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and I was able to get donations from Monte Alto, Hannaford, and the Common Man roadside on Tenny Mountain Highway. And this helped significantly decrease our election expense line. I just want to say real quick, because I know I'm short on time, that Plymouth is one of the most important towns in this state for elections because we have a university, we have a homeless shelter, we have a veterans home, and and I hope I have the privilege of continuing to work with our wonderful, wonderful election officials in this town.
Well, thank you, Josie. This is kind of a good one because a number of you have said that you would like to see more transparency and communication between the select board and town residents. And the question is, how would you improve transparency and communication between residents and select board members? And yeah, why don't you pass that down and see who grabs it first? That's fair enough.
There are
Right.
several things I think that would benefit transparency. The first thing is when you enter the town hall on both sides in that lobby, the walls are covered with pieces of paper and nobody has any idea what they mean. Everything that's announced as far as a schedule for open public meetings is so lost in that clutter that most people have no idea. That needs to be cleaned up. The next thing that needs to happen is the town website needs to be made functional. Right now it is not. You go on the town website, you may get some information that's beneficial, or you may be redirected to another page that still doesn't give you the information you're looking for. Somebody has got to be able to organize that. We have a university in this town. They know how to do it. There are students there who would love to take on that task just for the practice and to be able to put on their resume that they helped maintain the Town of Plymouth website. Those are just two things. There are more things that should be done to accomplish that.
All right, great, thank you. Neil?
We need to develop a change in culture in town hall. We need to improve teamwork on the select board. We have diverse individuals, but we're all equals, and we need to work as a team and develop clear decision-making procedures.
Okay, thank you. Zach?
There's a few different things in my mind. The first is I've been a little bit confused about the difference between the working session that the select board has and then the public meeting. I'm not sure why they have that working session not in public view. The planning board's working sessions are in public view. Why is that not on camera? Why are those minutes not posted on the website? Why is that such a sort of secret thing that's happening? Now, granted, we're allowed to attend, but it's a very small room, and it's sort of implied that we're not supposed to be there. That's got to stop. I would really want to get that resolved. I talked about trying to get community participation more generally. I think the idea of posting information about our meetings only in town hall, where we all go fairly rarely, unless we're going to those meetings, and then we're only speaking to the people who attend anyway. I think we've got to get those notices at the transfer station. We've got to get, maybe we talk to Hannaford and Market Basket and Walmart and see, is there a space where we can put public notifications around meetings that are happening, hearings that are happening? How can we get that information in front of people? And finally, the website is quite poor. I've spent my entire career building websites, and I think I can help to figure out how to make that work.
All right, thank you. And Mike?
Thank you. I'm also concerned about the work session. I would like it to be more open to the public and that it be televised. Again, the select board has to work closely together as a team to get things done. And also, when we vote, it would be nice if each select board member could explain why they're voting that way instead of just saying yes or no. I think that would help out quite a bit. And again, the select board, we've got to go out and talk to the community and get them more involved. It's our responsibility as well to do that. Thank you.
Wonderful. And I think we skipped Mary Ann.
Nothing new. I agree what has already been said. My biggest focus, as well as Zach's, has been on our website. I geekily go there quite often. Like I said before, I like to watch the select board meetings. I'm not often able to attend them, so it's nice to be able to see them later on. I'd love to see the work sessions as well. But I'd like to see agendas, right? Should I attend the meeting? Is there something related to me or important to me that I would like to be part of? I'd like to see all the meeting minutes, not just from the select board or the planning board, but from the parking committees, the economic development committees, the budget committees. I would like to see and have access to all that information. Thank you.
All right, and the next one is for the select board candidates again, and it is, what are your thoughts about housing density and perhaps the model of clustered housing?
So that's a difficult one. Being in a university town, it's sort of heartbreaking to drive through town and see a lot of the old houses converted into student housing. But that is shifting now. There has been some new movement in the university to have students taken out or taken back into the dorms outside of the housing available in Plymouth. So I think that gives us that opportunity, once again, to make those houses more affordable for young families to stay in the town, to live in the town. And that's where I'd like to see that go.
One of the things that struck us when we first started to visit the town years ago was the classic architecture. But as we've seen more recently, a lot of the classic architecture has been converted to student housing. I'm one of those who is pleased, the students aren't, but I'm pleased that they're now being restricted to the dorms until their senior year. There is not the need for those buildings to remain as student housing. There's got to be a way to take those buildings back, refurbish them into single-family dwellings, and make them as charming as they ought to be.
All right, thank you. Neil?
I thought I heard you say something about cluster development.
I did. That was part of the question. The question was, what are your thoughts on housing density and the model, I think, of clustered housing?
Well, if cluster housing would be new development, and I think it's a good idea because it provides more green space And it also puts the residential properties in closer proximity for roads and services, so they're more efficient. And I think cluster development is a good idea, but we definitely have a housing crisis in our community, and that's going to have to be a topic of this. There probably will be developers coming to the planning board.
All right, thanks, Neil. Zach?
I agree. Clustered housing in general is going to get our infrastructure costs down. You've got fewer roads to bring there, less sewer lines to run, less water lines to run. In general, if you can build that new construction in a clustered way, we can do it more affordably and have less of an impact on the town. So I think that's great. I do think if we actively want to get more people into what is currently student housing, the only way to do that is to get our tax rate down. If our tax rate's at our current rate, then Lakes Region or student, I don't know, Stope and Kevin. There's a couple people in the audience who work for some of these companies, and they can't afford to put a single family in student housing where students are paying this price and they're expected to take a single family at this price. But if they could get that tax rate down, they could still make the profit that they need on their rentals to afford to maintain them at a high rate, which some of them do.
All right, good, thank you. Mike?
Cluster housing is just one way to do housing. I mean, I think any new housing projects that are going up should do that. But also we have to look at our area that surrounds downtown, that surrounds the college. And we have to look at our community and try to come up with ways to get younger people to come into our community. And the way, that would be a nice area, but you're going to have to work with the college so that people are willing to live in that area instead of dealing with college students that, have quite a few people in a house right next door to you. So come up with a better way to get our younger families moving into town, which definitely would help our community, would probably be great. Cluster housing is just one of many things we should have on the table to figure out what's the best way forward for housing. Thank you.
All right, Mike, why don't you hold on to that? And the next question is also for the select board candidates, and this, I don't know, this may generate a few sparks. Do you feel there is too much untaxed property in town? Do you think anything can be done about it?
We do have a lot of untaxed property in town. There's no doubt about it. But Plymouth is also looked at as a hub to provide services for poor surrounding communities. And we've so far figured out a way to work with them, and because they're an important part of the community, and a lot of our citizens go to those nonprofit places. So, I mean, we just have to continue to work on that and see if there are ways to improve it. It's one of the tougher questions that our community deals with.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Why don't you give it right back to Zach?
This feels almost like a question targeted at the university as the big landholder that is untaxed. But I don't think we would have the services we have without the biggest employer that we have in town. It's true that they don't pay taxes on the land that they have, but they give back in a lot of other ways. They contribute to our services. They pay high-paying jobs into our community. They bring the student population in that allows an ice cream shop in downtown to succeed, right? Them being in our community makes our community better. So like I said earlier, we need to find good ways to work with them so that we can find win-wins to help offset the lost tax revenue opportunity we have there.
When I served in the legislature, it was my legislation which resulted in the agreement between the university and the town to reimburse the town for services rendered. I know that the university is struggling right now, and it's a really, really hard time for them, and we need to work with them. But we can also keep talking with them about getting reimbursement, and we can also talk with the other non-tax-paying entities in town about any way that they could provide the town with some kind of support. Other than that, it's a pretty difficult question.
I think a lot of this does go back to the relationship between the town and the university. But it occurs to me that I've seen this many times before. Virtually every small town that has a university associated with it, there's a tension between those two entities. Some towns have gotten a conversation going with the universities, and the relationship works for both and works very well. I think one of the things that needs to happen initially is we need to contact some of those towns and ask them what they did, how they did it, and see if we can implement some of those things into Plymouth. There shouldn't be any problem doing that, but it is going to take some time and patience. But Plymouth, the town of Plymouth needs the university, and the university needs the town of Plymouth, and there's got to be working space there.
Yeah, I would like to echo what Carl said. We both need each other. Like I said before, we partner with the university on many things, and my shop and the university, and it's a win-win for both of us. We work with many classes. We work with microeconomics. We work with marketing. We work with social media, and it's a win-win for both of us. We both get something out of it, and I think that's important as we continue to work with the university. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Marianne. I'm just wondering if I should, well, this is sort of a follow-on question. We may hear the same sort of information back, but the next question actually is, at times, the relationship between the university and the town is challenging. What would you do to forge a healthier relationship between the two?
Yeah, that is obviously very similar, so I don't want to repeat myself. I know there is a committee, I think it's between the select board and the university, and I'd like to see that partnership strengthened. Once again, it's all about communication. It's good for us, it's good for them. They do a lot for us, we do a lot for them. So I think that partnership, together we can do something.
All right, thank you, Marianne. And Carl?
Sometimes rough patches occur because of personality conflicts. I don't know if that's the case here. It wouldn't surprise me if it were. I think what needs to happen is we need to honestly ask the university what it wants. And hopefully then we can explain to them what we want. And there's going to be overlaps, which is going to be a place to begin to build a permanent bridge.
I served on the campus community council for quite a number of years, and I think we need to continue the diplomacy and the dialogue.
All right, Zach?
Yeah, same idea. I worked at the university for many years. I have a lot of good contacts still there. I have a lot of good relationships there that hopefully I could lean on to sort of get that conversation going again. I believe my understanding is that some of that started to happen because the prior president was very good at working with people and building those sorts of bridges, and the current president hasn't had the same relationship with the town. So we need to build that relationship. We need to talk to him. We need to figure out how he can feel the same symbiotic relationship that we all believe needs to be there, and really get him at the table to have a conversation.
All we can do is communicate, and we just have to do it more and make sure that we're both open as to what our wants and needs are to, continue that process.
All right, that's it for that. I think I've got one more. I'm not sure who should answer this, but it's that the proposed budget for fiscal 2021 sets the salary for the town clerk at $53,000, which is $10,500 less than the previous clerk was paid. I'm not sure who asked this question, but the question is, what are your thoughts about this? And it seems to be addressed to everyone.
Well, last year we had that conversation with the former town clerk, and they did a study, and they decided that based on the surrounding communities, this is how much that person should get. And recently they also did that with the police and fire. So based on that, the salary that's proposed is low.
I see.
And that was, where I'm looking at as to why it's so low, when we did the study, it was quite a bit higher than what they're offering right now.
Can I ask a follow-up? I didn't understand that. Was the conclusion of the study that the prior clerk was paid more than the market
The
would
conclusion of the study last year was that the former town clerk got a raise, substantial raise. I think it was about 15%. And so this salary that they're offering is almost $10,000 lower than what the former town clerk had, was
Okay.
being paid.
All right,
That's
Zach?
my understanding of it.
All right, you want
Is
to
that
give it to
clear,
Zach?
or-
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I'll admit to not knowing a lot of the details here. I assume that the prior town clerk probably had been in the position longer, had more years of experience. Those are the sorts of things that generally factor into salaries. I will say, as soon as we start talking salary negotiation, this is the exact sort of scenario where the selectmen go into private session and discuss personnel and negotiation in an appropriate and ethical way. So it is a little bit awkward to have that conversation here when the town's trying to get the right value, but also do right by their employee.
Yeah, Neil?
I believe that the issue needs to be illuminated more before we pronounce any conclusions.
In a generic commentary, my observation is that the Plymouth town clerk job is far more complicated than any of the town clerk jobs anywhere near here. So if they're comparing salaries for the Plymouth town clerk to the town clerks that are in other small towns in this area, that's an invalid comparison. They do a lot more at the Plymouth Town Clerk's office. And if the job is to be done right, it needs to be paid more.
I too can't speak to the specifics of the town clerk's salary or any other salaries of the town. I think we need to do our due diligence and compare those salaries to other towns similar size.
And I sort of feel like it's not fair to ask the clerk candidates to answer that question. Make a comment.
All right. I just want to mention what I did last year is that I decreased the town clerk's salary line by $6,500 to $57,000. What I'd like to see the town do is start the practice of creating salary ranges. So with the current salary line for the town clerk, what is suggested is $53,000. I don't think that's a bad salary for someone. But what I think the town should do is maybe say $53,000 is acceptable for someone who is beginning in Plymouth, because the town clerk does play a very essential role in this town. Maybe 57,000 makes sense for someone who's more experienced, and 63,500 for, which is what Karen made her final year, makes sense for someone who has more longevity. I would just like to make a correction that the town clerk is not an employee. The town clerk is an elected official, and it's not a personnel matter. It is a town matter, and that is up to the legislative body, not the Board of Selectmen, the legislative body, what the town clerk makes in this town, and that is decided at town meeting.
All right, I think since you gave us a pretty good speech, we should probably let
Thank you.
Jenny have a chance if she'd like.
One of the things that I learned is that the salary that that Karen had was based on her experience, and I believe she was at 12 years, so which is why the number was lowered from the original one. And I want to say, if I'm correct, that 53 is actually a little higher than some towns. I know Plymouth does a lot, and I'm not downgrading that at all. But there is a wide range of salaries, and it is something that the salary of the town clerk is something that needs to be taken into consideration, because it does, in its own small way, affects the tax rate.
Well, there are places where it's really a part-time job too.
Oh, right, yeah,
think,
I wouldn't be comparing
Yeah.
like a 20-hour town clerk to a
Right.
40-hour town clerk. I'm doing the same
Josie?
comparison.
You go ahead and add something to that, yeah.
You're right. You know, some clerks in some areas make very less money, but in Plymouth it is a full-time position, and I'm not speaking on my behalf. I'm speaking on whoever is in that position. Some weeks, my good weeks, I work 40 hours a week. Other weeks, I work up to 50 hours a week, and on election weeks, I work 60 hours a week. So I think the town should take that into consideration, whoever is in that position. The clerk does a lot in this community, and I think that that position should be looked at.
All right, thank you, Josie. Now, we're going to have a last question for the Select Board candidates, and that is, what would you do to encourage more engagement by the citizens of the town in Select Board meetings and public hearings?
Say that one more time.
What would you do to encourage more engagement by citizens in the Select Board meetings and public hearings?
Oh, that's a very good question. We certainly, sit in the planning board, and yeah, people are not clamoring to get in. Geez, that's a really tough question. There are many people who are involved in many aspects of the community. We certainly have a lot of nonprofits, and people step up to that. It's a tough call on how to drive people in. I think part of it is the communication, getting more out there to the town. I know, postings about tonight were limited to town hall, and I think the library. I may not visit those two enough. So I'd like to see us push that out. I know there's some communication going through the papers as well, and that's where I find a lot of my information. But social media is a great aspect. Just going out and meeting the community. I'm lucky that I get an opportunity every day to meet a lot of members of the community, and we certainly share a lot of information. So I'd just like to see us communicate better. Once again, do more postings, but more about town, more where people go. Maybe the senior center, maybe selfishly the ice cream shop. I don't know, but there's certainly more advertising we can do about these committees and boards.
As I said before, one thing to do is to clean up the lobby of the town hall so that you can find things that are posted in there. Clean up the website so that more information about what are the upcoming events and what's the agenda and what are the topics. But I think we're missing a bet in not reaching out to the students at the university, because they have a right to know what's happening in the town too. They live here, and they're here for 4 years, and some of them for a lot longer. So some of those will be interested if we can post information in various locations throughout the university. Stores along Main Street. some of them would be, I'm sure, very happy to post some agendas in places that are easy to see, like the ice cream shop. And places along Tenny Mountain Highway, I'm sure, would be very happy to say, there's a select board meeting, and this is going to be the topic, and this is the time and location for anybody that's interested. You're going to get more people showing up, and the more welcome people feel at the meetings, the more likely you're going to get them to return and bring people with them.
And Neil?
I think information sharing and transparency are key. We need to have more clearly defined decision-making processes that are open. We need to have more advanced notice and expanded notice to the public on all matters. And I think that the student collaboration in town projects is very important.
And Zach?
Yeah, for sure. I think the transparency drives the participation, and so as the government is more transparent about what they're doing, what their intents are, they're sharing agendas, they're sharing results of meetings, people start to show up and feel more engaged. Honestly, I think that submitting questions ahead of time in this format is great. It might have been a more engaging experience with this audience if maybe we took questions directly from people. I think that people have to feel like they're participating for it to be a participatory democracy. And as long as that continues to be an issue, then engagement's going to be challenging.
All right, thank you, Mike.
One-on-one conversations help out a lot because people don't feel comfortable in meetings and things like that. And the more that you can meet with the individual citizens in the community, I think will help to encourage them to be more involved in government.
And I think, yes? Oh, sure. We got, what time is it? We got 5 minutes. Well, we've got 4.
One of the things that I just want to point out is some of the things do happen on a small level. I know in some of those work sessions, we did have people from the government classes come because it was a requirement from the teachers that the students go to certain events, certain meetings. So we did have some people, but it would be great to have more of that and to communicate with the university and to get, you know, maybe even just the government classes or something like that, to be able to get more people to come to the meetings. When the meetings are full, it's a completely different vibrancy that has energy. The communication on where to advertise is big. There are certain RSAs on how many places you have to put it out, but you know, there are requirements on what you have to put out, but it would be great if we could get it to more places. But the real idea I had, which I just thought of while I was sitting here, is the idea of office hours, like professors have. Sometimes it's a little awkward to go up to people that are, yes, they're your elected officials, but hitting them up in Hannaford and telling them good or bad what your feelings are on something doesn't necessarily make everybody comfortable. But saying that Monday, Wednesday, Friday from 3 to 4, there's going to be a select person in the office for you to come see might be a really interesting way to get people to come into the town hall. Then they would see the flyers. They could talk to the select person. They could get to know their select person better. And then they would get to know everybody in all of the offices better. So that was just an idea that I came up of. So.
Can you repeat the question for me, please, Mike?
If I can find it. Well, it was, what would you do to encourage more engagement by citizens in the select board meetings and public hearings?
Yeah, I think more openness is important. I think tonight, you know, it was addressed that sometimes people, when they attend board meetings, they don't always feel comfortable to speak. I think that's an area that we could work on, inviting people to sit on work session meetings, and like Zach said, making sure that we're recording those and putting them on PBTV for everyone to see who can't make it. I also agree we need to get the university more involved. There are a lot of students on campus who would love some internships at the town. I was an intern once, and I think there are many areas, like our website. We could have an intern work on the website. Actually, in the office, one area that we haven't really been able to focus on in the past is genealogy services. Those records are public, but because we don't have the manpower or the time to focus in that area, I think that would be a great way of having a part-time work study student come in and help people who are trying to focus on ancestry. And so there are just so many other ways we could get people more involved. I think advertising, we need to work with local businesses and just have more open communication overall.
All right, thank you, Josie. So unless, yes,
I'm so glad you said that, Zach, about, answering questions. I just have a really quick one. What is, and this is to everyone, what is your opinion of SB towns?
Well, first of all, we weren't going to take any questions from the floor unless they had been submitted in writing. I think, and I don't know, why are you waving your hand over there? Okay. Do you guys want to take a little more time and answer the questions that Kathy has? Is there a problem with the TV or the, anything? All right, let's do that then. And although you didn't submit it, it sounds like a fair question. Why don't we have you guys? Josie has a question for me to ask. Well, let's answer the SB2 question. And I think that's basically a question for the select board candidates. And so can you?
Can I answer that too, actually?
You are something.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, well, go ahead.
I think we should be an SB2 town. I believe Bristol, New Hampshire is. They have.
I'm sorry. The question is, what is your opinion on SB2 towns? That's one of my written questions, too. Sheep.
I believe Bristol, I think it would be a great way for people to be able to, and let me just, SB2 is meetings on Saturday, correct? Oh, what is the issue of SB2 again? Can you clarify? Oh, everything's on the ballot. Okay, thank you. Yes, I do. Just to clarify, I think SB2 would be a good thing, that to have all warrant or everything to be on the ballot. That way, people who are present at town election would be able to read or see those issues and be able to vote on them. And those people may not be able to attend the meeting the next day, and I think that's a great way to address that issue.
I definitely think it's something that would require a lot more thought, because town meeting is town meeting, and the idea of coming to town meeting and voting is sort of special. I don't know enough about how it's worked in other towns, and their happiness levels, with people being able to vote everything on the election day versus the town meeting. Myself, I don't know that answer, so I would have to do more research to see how it would affect Plymouth specifically.
All right.
Yeah,
Mary?
the same. I don't know enough about SB2 towns to comment. I think it's a great idea to get all the questions out on the ballot for us to vote for them. But I also like the idea of the town meetings and understanding things a bit better there, more discussion, and then voting on them. So I'd need to do more research.
Town meetings can be a deliberative session where a topic can be discussed, not necessarily voted on. The issue probably is better placed on a ballot, but it should certainly be discussed in an open forum so that people can express what they feel and why they feel it.
We've tried a number of times, and we've come really close at times, but it's a really high hurdle. I think having a deliberative session and then having it on the ballot is probably better.
I think I'd want to do some more research to understand what level of engagement changed when towns made that adjustment. I know that today our town meetings are somewhat poorly attended, and is that kind of change going to increase attendance, or is it going to decrease attendance? I'm honestly not sure. I'd want to look into it more with that as kind of one of the real critical factors.
Plymouth Regional High School runs under the SB2 rules. And this year's deliberative session, there are only 4 of us there. So far, it hasn't proven to be the one thing to get people out. They don't show up for the meetings, they just show up to vote. And that's it. And sometimes if you've got a critical need in your community and your budget goes up quite a bit to deal with that need that you're no control over, if the people vote to go to the year before's budget, which is what it reverts back to, you'd be struggling. So I'm not in favor of an SB2 bill, and it does not increase participation. Thank you.
All right, now I've got a couple more of these written questions here that were submitted tonight, and this is one of them. Many Plymouth residents feel there is a culture of us versus them, meaning town staff and select board versus residents. Do you think this is an accurate assessment? And if so, how could you help to discontinue this? Who's got the microphone? Mike, you want to?
I don't personally feel that way because I try to attend the select board meetings and talk and get an idea of what's going on. But it can be intimidating to go into a meeting and to, ask questions. And I think that might be the reason why that's the way it is.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
It has a lot to do with the individual.
And Zach?
Was that question about the town and the elected officials, or the town and the university?
What it says is, no, this is not the university. It says town, staff, and board versus residents.
Okay. Yeah, I having attended some meetings recently and watching the videos, I certainly don't get that impression in the room. I don't see that us versus them happening. Whether or not that's an impression in town, I think I'd have to have a lot more conversations with people to understand. And engagement is a big deal, and I would want to have a lot of conversations with people about why aren't you coming to these sorts of meetings? Why aren't you coming to this hearing? Why aren't you going to school board meetings? And perhaps that would reveal that there is an us versus them versus, instead of we're all in this together, we are all a community. But I would have to do more research to really feel confident there.
Thank you.
There is an undercurrent in the town, and we need to get away from that. We need to open things up more and make it possible for people to get more information and know what's going on before it happens.
I've had quite a number of conversations with residents, and I've come away with the feelings that many do not feel welcome at select board meetings or work sessions, and they avoid them because it's simply uncomfortable. It may be a personality issue, but I think I've talked to more people than I'm comfortable with that tell me that. So there's got to be a problem as far as welcoming citizens into these sessions.
I personally don't see that, but I am part of the process. And so I certainly encourage everyone else to be part of the process. I don't think people understand how much these decisions, select board, planning boards, other committees, actually do affect their lives. What was that, all politics are local, and being part of it, I see that that's a very true statement. You know, it sounds silly, but in front of my shop, we recently had a tree fall down. And I told one of the select board members it was on the next working session. I spoke with the town administrator. She had it on her list, and it will be addressed. So there are no things that are small or too large to share, and hopefully everyone's approachable.
All right, thank you. Yep. Yeah, well, you go ahead. Yep.
So I started in sort of the smaller elected positions with cemetery trustee. It was a real hot election day, let me tell you. Trustee of the trust funds, there's a lot of people going for that one. And so then it's sort of like I'm a townsperson, but I'm getting help from the town office, and I only was welcomed and guided. Anne over there is phenomenal at her job and great at helping people with any question, no matter how small. And I assure you, there were plenty of small questions. But she guided me and was able to help me. And then when I became a select person, I was very excited when people would actually come up to me and tell me things, and then I could report back to the select board. It didn't happen a lot, but it happened enough times that it made me feel that people did feel like they could come to me. And almost every session, we have someone on the select board say, oh, well, this person came up to me, or someone who doesn't want to be named came up to me and talked about this difficult topic. So I don't see that us versus them. There's always people who don't get along, but it's definitely something that one of the benefits of having a 5-person select board, and it's not a large staff, but a large staff in the office means that there's a lot of different people that you can talk to. So if you don't like one person on the select board, well, there's 4 more that you can track down in order to talk to about them. So that's how I feel.
And Josie?
Yeah, being in the town clerk's office, yes, people do come in and they voice their concerns that sometimes they're not feeling heard in this community. I think that's a problem because we need more communication between town offices and this community. That could be easily solved. For example, a lot of us have mentioned tonight making more use of our town website. Also, we have a lot of boards in this community. Why not ask some of the people in town who have been residents for a long time to serve on them, even though they may not be a town employee. We have a beautiful community that has attracted people from different parts of this world, different parts, different careers and organizations, and I think that we need to hear what experience they can provide and help us reach those opportunities.
All right, thank you. Now, I have one more question that was submitted, and I don't know exactly what it means, but you can each give us your own interpretation. It says, how can you commit to this job and not rely too much on the town administrative assistant's opinion to guide your decisions? I think this person is getting at maybe the extent to which the select board exercises its own independent judgment over that of the office staff. I'm not entirely sure, but that's the way I took it. That was for the select board.
I'm going to take your word for it, and that's what they meant. I think it's important for the select board to reach out to the town staff. They do a lot of research for the town, for the select board, and they have a lot of information. I think it's important to share that information, not only with the town staff, but amongst, obviously, the select board. Everybody brings different experiences to the table. But I think ultimately you have to listen to your gut and take all the information in and make your own decision.
Well, without putting too fine a point on it, I've had several people explain to me their concern that the town administrator, former town administrator, had far too much control over what the select board discussed and what their decisions were. And I suspect that's what the question refers to. Select board needs to be in charge of the administrator or the town manager, not the other way around. There's no place for the tail wagging the dog in the town of Plymouth.
I agree with Carl. There needs to be more information sharing and transparency. We need to have more clearly defined decision-making process.
So I think if we're going to get people from the community involved, one of the things we're going to need is for the select board to be reviewing agendas and engaged with the topics that are going to be discussed in advance, so that they have time to educate themselves and come into a town meeting or a select board meeting and have a conversation about a topic. I think one of the things that we sometimes see is one or two personalities on the select board who have a strong opinion about a topic, and then others that just sort of go along. I think that everyone on that board needs the time in advance to be able to see those things, internalize them, understand the agenda, understand the laws that they're dealing with, and then actually be effective in the working meetings and in those public meetings. So I would spend a lot of time educating myself on that, and then pushing for good agendas in advance, so that they could be worked appropriately.
And Michael?
Well, the town administrator should be presenting facts, not opinions. And I think that's maybe where the difficulty is. The select board has to study the issue and make sure they understand it so that they can make their decision as a select board.
All right. I'm going to ask one more of the clerks, or the prospective clerks, and that is, what changes would you make to the clerk's office, if any?
So the experiences that I've had in the town clerk's office haven't necessarily needed changing. I know that there are expanding information on the website about dog licensing online, motor vehicle registration online. Everybody gets the letter saying that you don't necessarily have to go in, that sort of thing. Making it easier so that if you don't meet the times. I don't know if everybody remembers when CGSB didn't have Saturday hours. They had one night where they were open later. And then they got Saturday hours, so they stopped that. But I really liked when they were open until 8 one night a week. So that would be an option, changing the hours, because not everybody works, or most people work 8:30 to 4:30 or 4. So it's really difficult to get there unless you take a day off or take a half day or whatever. So looking at the hours that the town clerk works would be a really great one, a great option to look into for change. And that's all I have to say.
I totally agree with you, Jenny. Being in the town clerk's office for 3 years, there is a need in this community. We have a lot of people a lot of commuting families who commute from West Lebanon, Bedford, even as far as Massachusetts. I personally have had to stay until 6 p.m. at night to help assist people in the office. When you're an elected official, that's just the sacrifice you make sometimes. But I think it would be nice if we had more regular hours for people so they know what to expect from the clerk's office. Jenny is right. I think Saturdays, that would be a great thing to bring back. Opening up a few hours on a Saturday, that would really help people. Also, I've considered maybe closing early one day and staying later, say a Wednesday, until 6:30 p.m. That would also be a resource to the people in this community. And I think I've already mentioned the rest about keeping minutes in the office and making sure that people have the right to access those copies whenever they need to.
All right. I think we're done. I think we should give all these people a nice round of applause. Not only for answering all those questions, but for being willing to offer their services to the town of Plymouth. We need that, and this year we have more than we need. So hopefully, anybody who doesn't make it will come back next year and fill another spot. I'd also like to thank PBTV, of course, for their help with this thing and for broadcasting it. I know Kathy Kelsey was instrumental in getting this thing together, from what I heard, and Val Scarborough, and I'm sure the folks from the town office spent quite a bit of time on this, too. They're always very good to us, so thank all of you. And if there's nothing else, we stand adjourned.